Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. I used to believe that marriage was about balance, that if one person struggled, the other would step up, that if I supported Amanda's career, put my ambitions on hold to help her chase hers, she would appreciate it. But somewhere along the way, the balance shifted. She was always moving, phone calls, business trips, fancy dinners with clients. I was the constant, the one who kept things running at home, who picked up the slack when she was too busy to remember birthdays or family plans. I told myself it was just a phase, that once she secured her place at the top of her company, things would settle. But they didn't. If anything, they got worse. The first time I noticed something was off, it was small. A look she gave me during dinner, a brief flicker of annoyance when I asked how her day went. Exhausting, she said, sighing as she scrolled through her phone. You wouldn't understand. I let it slide. Maybe she was just tired. But then came the little jabs, the subtle digs in public. At a family barbecue, I was standing by the grill when her cousin asked how work was going. Before I could answer, Amanda cut in. Oh, Mark's work is stable, she said, smiling. He's not exactly climbing the corporate ladder, but hey, at least he's reliable. I heard the laughter, felt the chuckles ripple through the small group. I forced a smile, flipping the burgers, ignoring the way my stomach twisted. That was how it started. Little remarks, casual but sharp, always in front of others. It wasn't enough to be cruel in private. She wanted an audience. The breaking point came at her company's holiday party. I hadn't wanted to go. These events were her world, a polished display of wealth and ambition. But she insisted. It's important, she said, her tone firm. You need to be there. So I went. I wore the suit she picked out, nodded politely as she introduced me to people whose names I wouldn't remember. An hour in, I had drifted to the bar, content to nurse my drink in silence. Then I heard her laugh, sharp, familiar. She was standing in a circle of colleagues, glass of wine in hand, gesturing dramatically. I swear, sometimes it feels like I have two kids, she joked. One in kindergarten and one at home. Laughter, eyes flicking toward me. Someone smirked. So, Mark, when are you going to start pulling your weight? I swallowed the sharp retort sitting on my tongue. I had been pulling my weight for years, handling finances, running the household, making sure Amanda had the space to chase her career. But none of that mattered. Not to her. I set my glass down, walked out of the party. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every comment, every belittling glance. I had spent so much time excusing her behavior, convincing myself that this was just stress, just a phase. But it wasn't. Amanda didn't respect me, and I was finally starting to see it. I should have left that night. I should have walked out of the party and never looked back. But that's the thing about emotional abuse. It doesn't break you all at once. It wears you down, piece by piece, until you're standing in the wreckage of what used to be your dignity, wondering when it all fell apart. Amanda came home late, the sound of her heels clicking against the tile as she walked into the kitchen. I was sitting at the table, staring at the untouched glass of whiskey in front of me. I heard her sigh before she even spoke. Seriously? She muttered, dropping her purse onto the counter. I didn't answer. She walked over, arms crossed. You embarrassed me tonight. I let out a short, bitter laugh. I embarrassed you? You stormed out like a child. She snapped. Do you have any idea how that looked? People were asking questions. I clenched my jaw, keeping my voice even. Maybe you should have thought about that before making me the punchline of your jokes. She rolled her eyes. Oh, come on, Mark. It was just playful teasing. You're always so sensitive. There it was. The excuse, the gaslighting, the familiar way she twisted things to make it my fault. I had heard it so many times before that I almost believed it. Almost. I stood up slowly, meeting her gaze. If I made jokes about you like that in front of your coworkers, would you call it playful teasing? She scoffed. That's different. Why? Because I actually have something to lose. She shot back, her voice sharp. The words hit harder than I expected. She didn't even realize what she had just admitted. She didn't see me as her equal. I wasn't her husband. I was a liability. A weight she had been dragging behind her while she climbed higher and higher. I exhaled, shaking my head. Got it. She frowned. Mark, I didn't let her finish. I walked past her, grabbed my keys, and left. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove, the streetlights blurring past as I gripped the wheel, my mind racing. How long had this been happening? How long had I been excusing it, writing it off as stress, pressure, ambition? How long had I been letting her treat me like an afterthought? I pulled into a parking lot and just sat there, staring out the windshield. I used to think marriage was about sacrifice, that if you gave enough, if you were patient enough, things would balance out. But I was starting to realize that in our marriage, the sacrifice had only ever gone one way. And Amanda? She had never once looked back to see what it was doing to me. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek before leaving for work, humming as she grabbed her coffee. I watched her walk out the door like she hadn't spent the night tearing me down, like she knew I wouldn't do anything about it. I spent the day going through the motions, answering emails, reviewing reports, trying to focus. But my mind kept circling back to one thing, the feeling that something wasn't just wrong. It was worse than I had realized. It wasn't just the way she treated me. It was the late nights, the work trips that didn't line up, the way she had started guarding her phone like it held national secrets. I had ignored it before, convinced myself that she was just busy, that I was being paranoid. But now I wasn't so sure. That evening, I made dinner like I always did. Amanda came home late again, barely acknowledging me as she set her purse down and checked her phone. Another long day? I asked casually. She didn't even look up. Yeah, hospital meetings. Trying to lock down a contract. Stressful. I nodded slowly. Where was the meeting? She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. Westbury Hotel, she said too casually. The private suites. You know how these doctors are. They expect the best. A cold weight settled in my stomach. She didn't know that I knew. She didn't know that earlier that day, I had checked our credit card statements like I always did. She didn't know I'd seen the upgraded suite charge listed under her company's expense account. She had lied, without even blinking. I forced a small smile. Sounds exhausting. She sighed, rubbing her temples. You have no idea. I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to throw the evidence in her face, watch her scramble for excuses. But I knew how that would go. She would spin it, call me controlling, flip the script until I was the bad guy. No, if I was going to do this, I needed more. I needed proof. Amanda had spent years making me feel small, laughing at me, underestimating me. She thought I was weak. She was about to find out just how wrong she was. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Amanda sitting across from me at dinner, casually lying about where she had been, spinning another thread in the web she had been weaving for months. Maybe longer. The charge for the hotel suite wasn't just an oversight. It was a glimpse behind the curtain, a sign that her carefully constructed reality was built on deception. I needed answers. Real ones. The next morning, I waited until Amanda left for work before I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and started digging. I had always been meticulous with our finances, checking every statement, tracking every charge. Amanda barely glanced at them, trusting me to handle it all. That was her mistake. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Westbury Hotel wasn't a one-time event. There were charges going back months. Late-night stays, room service, expensive bottles of wine, all billed under her company's expense account. My stomach twisted, but I kept going. Flights to cities where she supposedly had meetings. Dinners at high-end restaurants. A jewelry purchase in Chicago, one she had never brought home. It was all there. I sat back in my chair, my pulse slow and steady. There was no denying it anymore. Amanda wasn't just cheating on me. She was using her job to fund it. I exhaled, running a hand down my face. I could feel the anger bubbling just beneath the surface, the urge to drive to her office, storm in, and demand the truth. But that wasn't the smart move. Not yet. If I wanted to end this, I had to be patient. I started taking screenshots, compiling everything into a neat little folder. Bank statements, hotel records, a digital trail of her betrayal. But I needed more. Something undeniable. Amanda had always prided herself on being careful. She kept her work phone locked, her emails private. But she wasn't as careful as she thought. She had a bad habit of leaving her laptop open when she got home, flipping through emails while sipping wine on the couch. I'd seen her do it 100 times. That night, I waited. She came home late again, setting her purse down with a sigh. Long day, she muttered, heading straight for the fridge. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. You look exhausted. She sighed dramatically. You have no idea. These doctors are impossible to deal with. I swear, they expect us to entertain them like royalty before they even consider signing a contract. My grip on my glass tightened. Guess that explains the hotel suite charges. She froze. For a split second, she didn't breathe. Then she turned, her expression carefully neutral. What? I took a slow sip of my drink, meeting her gaze. The upgraded suite. I saw the charge. Her lips parted slightly before she let out a short laugh. Oh, that. Yeah, I had to book something nicer to keep the client happy. You know how these negotiations work. She didn't even hesitate. Didn't even blink. I nodded slowly. Makes sense. Her shoulders relaxed just slightly. I'll expense it all back, don't worry. The company covers it. I forced a smile. Of course. She grabbed her wine and sat on the couch, flipping open her laptop. I waited, watching as she scrolled through emails, occasionally typing responses. Then she got up to grab something from the kitchen. Now, I slid onto the couch and moved quickly, my fingers tapping through the open tabs. Her inbox was pulled up, messages from coworkers, corporate memos. But then I saw it. An email thread with a subject line that made my stomach turn. Our last meeting. I clicked. The conversation was between Amanda and a doctor, one of her clients. The messages were careful, vague enough that an outsider wouldn't immediately suspect anything. But the context was clear. That suite was incredible. You always know how to make meetings more enjoyable. Her response, only the best for my favorite client. Same place next week? His reply, wouldn't miss it. Dinner first? I barely heard her footsteps returning, but I closed the laptop just in time. She sat back down, sipping her wine, completely unaware. You okay? She asked, raising an eyebrow. I smiled. Yeah, just thinking. She smirked. Try not to overdo it. I stared at her, at the woman I had built a life with, the woman who had spent years making me feel like I wasn't enough. And all I felt was cold, steady detachment. I knew what I had to do. Amanda thought she was untouchable, that she had me wrapped around her finger, that I would never see the truth, never fight back. She was wrong. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg for answers. I wasn't going to let her spin this into something it wasn't. No, I was going to destroy her. I had always assumed that if my marriage ended, it would be a slow, painful unraveling. But now that I saw the truth, I realized something. This wasn't unraveling. It was controlled demolition. And I was the one holding the detonator. Amanda had spent years making me feel small. Every joke at my expense, every eye roll, every dismissive wave of her hand when I tried to express how I felt, it had all been leading up to this moment. The moment when I finally saw her for who she really was. Not a driven professional, not a woman under pressure, just a liar who thought she was untouchable. But she wasn't untouchable. I spent the next few days gathering everything. The credit card statements, the email exchanges. I went through her work calendar, checking every trip she had taken in the last 6 months and matching them with suspicious expenses. It was all there, hotel stays, expensive dinners, gifts charged to the company. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was committing corporate fraud to do it. She had given me everything I needed to ruin her. But I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Amanda was careful. She had built a reputation as someone who could handle high-stakes deals, who played by the rules. If I stormed in with accusations, she would deny everything. Twist it. Call me insecure, paranoid. I had seen her do it before, to coworkers, to subordinates who questioned her. No, I needed to be patient, precise. I reached out to an old friend, someone who worked in corporate compliance. I kept it vague, posing a hypothetical situation. What happens if a sales rep uses company funds to entertain a client, but the entertainment is personal? His response came quickly. If they get caught, immediate termination, could even face legal trouble, depending on the amount. I thanked him, then went to work. I created an anonymous email account and attached every piece of evidence I had compiled. The credit card statements, the hotel records, the emails. I worded it carefully, professionally. Not an angry husband seeking revenge, just a concerned party bringing unethical behavior to light. Then I sent it to her company's compliance department, to her boss, to the head of HR. And then I waited. Amanda had no idea what was coming. The next few days were business as usual. She left early, came home late, acting like everything was fine. She was too confident, too secure in the belief that she was in control. It almost made me laugh. Then, on Thursday morning, I saw it. An email from her company, marked urgent. She was in the shower, getting ready for work. So I casually strolled over to the counter where she had left her phone and tilted the screen just enough to read the preview. Amanda, we need to discuss a serious issue regarding your expense reports. Please report to the office immediately. I smiled. She walked out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around her body, completely oblivious. God, this week has been exhausting, she muttered. I have a flight tomorrow for another client dinner, and I swear if I have to listen to another doctor talk about how overworked he is while sipping a $100 whiskey, I sipped my coffee, hiding my smirk. Sounds rough. She grabbed her phone, checking her messages, and I saw it. The split-second reaction, the way her body stiffened, the way her hand gripped the towel just a little tighter. She exhaled, too forced, too controlled. Then she plastered on a casual smile and set her phone down like it was nothing. I have to head in early. Some last-minute meeting. I nodded. Of course. She got dressed quickly, barely touching her breakfast, barely speaking. By the time she left, I could see it, the tension in her shoulders, the way she was already bracing for impact. She knew. I spent the rest of the day waiting, watching. Amanda was supposed to be home by 6, but 6 came and went. Then 7, then 8. At 9, she finally walked in. She looked different. The confidence, the untouchable arrogance, it was gone. She set her purse down with shaking hands, her eyes tired, her face pale. She didn't speak at first, just poured herself a drink with unsteady fingers. I leaned against the counter, watching her. Long day. She swallowed hard, then forced a tight smile. Yeah, just work stuff. I sipped my coffee, nodding. Anything serious? She let out a hollow laugh. No, just some internal audit. They're reviewing expenses, trying to make sure everything's in order. Nothing to worry about. She was lying. I could see in her eyes. That sounds stressful, I said. Is there anything I can do to help? She gave me a sharp look, something wary in her expression. No, it's just work. Nothing for you to worry about. I nodded again. Of course. She took her drink and disappeared into the bedroom, shutting the door behind her. I waited until I heard the shower running before I pulled out my phone. A new email had arrived. Mark, we appreciate the information you provided. An internal investigation has been launched, and appropriate action will be taken. While we cannot disclose details, please know that we take these matters very seriously. I exhaled slowly, setting my phone down. It was happening. Amanda had spent years looking down on me, treating me like I was beneath her. She had built a life on deception, on arrogance, on the assumption that she would never get caught. But now, her empire was crumbling, and I was the one who had lit the match. Amanda barely spoke to me the next morning. She moved through the house in a daze, her phone glued to her hand, typing furiously between sips of coffee. I sat at the table, pretending to be lost in my own work, but I was watching. The way she chewed the inside of her cheek, the way her fingers tapped anxiously against the counter when she wasn't texting. She was unraveling. Good. I had spent years watching her pick me apart with snide remarks and dismissive glances. Now I got to watch her crumble under the weight of her own choices. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I might be late, she said, forcing casualness in her voice. More meetings. I tilted my head. Still about the audit? A flicker of irritation crossed her face. It's not a big deal. I nodded slowly, taking a sip of coffee. Of course. She hesitated, studying me like she was trying to figure something out. Then, without another word, she left. The moment her car disappeared down the street, I grabbed my phone and checked my email. Nothing yet. I had been expecting an update from her company, something confirming what I already knew, that Amanda was in deep trouble, that all her careful lies were starting to collapse around her. Patience. I spent the rest of the day preparing. If this was going to end, it needed to end on my terms. I called my lawyer and scheduled a meeting. I gathered more documentation, expense reports, corporate policies, anything that would strengthen my case. Amanda had not only cheated on me, she had risked her career doing it. That was leverage. That was power. By late afternoon, I finally got what I had been waiting for. An email. Amanda's employment with our company has been terminated, effective immediately. Due to the sensitive nature of this matter, we cannot disclose further details, but appropriate actions have been taken. I let out a slow breath. It was done. She was done. Amanda's career, her precious, carefully curated reputation, had been obliterated with a single email. She had built her entire identity on being the best, on being untouchable. Now, she was nothing. I was still staring at the screen when I heard the front door slam. Amanda stormed into the house, her face red, her breathing uneven. She threw her purse onto the counter, her hands shaking. I got fired. I didn't move. Oh, she stared at me, waiting for a reaction, waiting for me to rush to her side, to offer comfort. But I just took another sip of my coffee, as if she had told me she burned dinner. She let out a short, humorless laugh. That's all you have to say? I leaned back in my chair, studying her. I'm just surprised, that's all. You always said you were the best. Hard to believe they'd let you go over a simple audit. Her eyes darkened. You think this is funny? I shrugged. I think it's ironic. She clenched her fists. This was sabotage. Someone set me up. I raised an eyebrow. Or maybe, I said slowly, you got caught. Her nostrils flared. They said someone sent an anonymous report. Do you know anything about that? I smiled. Why would I? She sucked in a breath. Mark, if I what? I interrupted, my voice calm. Expose the fact that you were using company money to book luxury hotel rooms, entertaining a client in a way that wasn't exactly professional. She froze. A flicker of panic crossed her face. You really thought you were untouchable, didn't you? I continued, standing up slowly. You thought you could lie to me, humiliate me, cheat on me, and I'd just take it. Her breathing grew unsteady. I can fix this, she muttered. I can talk to them, explain. I chuckled. Oh, Amanda. They don't want an explanation. They want distance. You're a liability now. She gripped the counter, her knuckles white. You did this. I met her gaze, unblinking. No, you did this to yourself. For the first time in years, I saw something in her eyes I had never seen before. Fear. She swallowed hard. Mark, please. I know I messed up, but we can get past this. I tilted my head. Past what? The affair? The years of insults? The way you treated me like I was nothing? She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. I have a meeting with my lawyer tomorrow, I said, my voice steady. We're filing for divorce. Her breath hitched. No. Ismilat. Yes. Her composure cracked. Mark, we can work this out. No, we can't. Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. She had spent years making me feel like I was replaceable. Now, she was the one being discarded. I turned and walked toward the door. Where are you going? She choked out. I glanced back at her one last time. To celebrate. Then I walked out, leaving her standing in the ruins of her own making. I drove aimlessly for a while, letting the quiet hum of the road settle the last bit of adrenaline in my veins. I should have been furious, heartbroken, maybe even relieved. But I felt none of those things. Instead, there was just a strange kind of clarity, a cold, detached acceptance of what had happened next. Amanda had lost everything in a matter of days. Her job, her reputation, the carefully constructed life she had built around herself. And soon, she'd lose me too. She just hadn't fully accepted it yet. By the time I got back home, the house was dark except for the faint glow of the kitchen light. I stepped inside, half expecting to find Amanda curled up on the couch with a glass of wine, waiting for me with some rehearsed speech about how we could fix this. Instead, she was pacing. Her arms were crossed, her movements jerky and restless. She looked up the second the door shut behind me. Where were you? I tossed my keys onto the counter, keeping my voice casual. Out. She let out a sharp breath. Mark, we need to talk. I walked past her, heading toward the fridge. I don't see what's left to say. Her footsteps followed me. You're really doing this? Just walking away? I grabbed a bottle of water, unscrewed the cap, and took a slow sip. Amanda, I don't know how to make this any clearer. We're done. She shook her head, her hands tightening into fists. No, we're not. We've been together too long for you to just throw this away. I turned to face her, my grip tightening on the bottle. I'm not the one who threw it away. Her face crumpled for a split second before she forced it back into something angrier, something sharper. Mark, you don't have to do this. I get it, okay? I screwed up. She dragged a hand down her face, her voice shaking. I should have been better. I should have treated you better. But we can fix this. I studied her, trying to find any real regret beneath the desperation. But all I saw was fear. Not fear of losing me. Fear of losing the life she had built. I sighed. Amanda, if you had come home one night and told me the truth, maybe I could have forgiven you. But you didn't. You kept lying. You kept making me feel like I was the problem while you were sneaking around behind my back. And you know what? I don't even think you feel bad for what you did. I think you feel bad because you got caught. She flinched like I had slapped her. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You don't mean that. I laughed, shaking my head. I've never meant anything more in my life. She took a step closer. I can fix this. I can get another job. We can go to counseling. I held up a hand, cutting her off. Amanda, stop. Her mouth snapped shut. I exhaled slowly. You and I both know exactly who you are. You don't respect me. You never did. I was just the guy who made your life easier. The guy who cleaned up the messes you didn't want to deal with. The guy who stayed home and handled everything so you could chase your career. Her eyes were wide now, her breaths coming uneven. You needed me to be small, I continued. Because if I wasn't, you'd have to admit that you're the problem. And you can't handle that, can you? Her face twisted into something unreadable. Mark, I'm done, I said, my voice final. I'll be moving out in a few days. The divorce papers will be ready soon. Her entire body went rigid. Moving out? Yes. She let out a bitter, shaky laugh. So that's it? You're just leaving? I met her gaze, unblinking. Yes. She took another step closer, reaching for me, her fingers brushing against my wrist. Please. I pulled away. No. Tears welled in her eyes, but they didn't affect me. Not anymore. You can't just walk away, she whispered. We built a life together. I exhaled sharply. No, Amanda. I built a life for you, and I'm finally taking it back. Silence. Her mouth opened, then closed. She had nothing left to say. No more excuses. No more manipulations. I turned and headed for the bedroom. Get some rest. You're going to need it. For what? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I paused in the doorway. For the rest of your life. Then I shut the door behind me, leaving her standing alone in the dark. The house felt different the next morning. Quieter. Not in a peaceful way, but in the way a battlefield feels after the last shot has been fired, the smoke settling over the ruins. I got up, showered, got dressed like it was any other day, but everything had changed. I had changed. Amanda was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table, a half-empty cup of coffee in front of her. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were swollen, her usual polished appearance replaced with something disheveled. For the first time in years, she looked small. She didn't speak as I grabbed a mug and poured myself coffee. I could feel her watching me, waiting, but I wasn't in the mood to fill the silence for her. Finally, she cleared her throat. Are you really leaving? I took a slow sip, savoring the warmth. Yes. Her fingers tightened around her cup. Mark, this is insane. We've been together for years. You can't just walk away. I tilted my head. I can, and I am. Her jaw clenched. So that's it? You get me fired, you humiliate me, and now you're done? I set my cup down and met her eyes. Amanda, you humiliated yourself. I just made sure people saw it. Her lips parted, but no words came out. For years, she had controlled every argument, every conversation. She had always been the one with the upper hand. But not this time. She exhaled sharply. So where are you going? Does it matter? Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. I don't understand how you're being so cold about this. I let out a soft laugh, shaking my head. Cold? Amanda, do you even hear yourself? You treated me like I was a burden for years. You made jokes at my expense, acted like I was some pathetic afterthought while you ran around behind my back. And now, when you finally have to deal with the consequences, I'm the cold one? She flinched. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. This isn't cold, Amanda. This is justice. Her face twisted, a mix of anger and desperation. I made a mistake. I arched a brow. No, you made a choice. Repeatedly. She pressed her lips together, like she was struggling to find the right words. But there weren't any. I checked my watch. I need to meet with my lawyer. She stiffened. Your lawyer? Yes, I said, grabbing my keys. We'll be filing for divorce officially by the end of the week. She shot up from her seat. Mark, please. We don't have to do this. We can. I cut her off with a sharp look. Amanda, stop. Just stop. She froze. You don't love me, I said, my voice steady. You love control. And you lost it. A tear slipped down her cheek. That's not true. I studied her, really studied her, trying to see if there was even a shred of the woman I had once loved. But there wasn't. Or maybe she had been gone for a long time. I sighed. Goodbye, Amanda. Her breath hitched. What am I supposed to do? I turned to the door, gripping the handle. Figure it out. Like I had to. Then I stepped outside, shutting the door behind me, leaving her to sit in the wreckage of her own making. I didn't look back. Not this time. Not ever again. I drove away from the house without a single glance in the rearview mirror. It wasn't my home anymore. Maybe it never had been. Not really. It had been a place where I existed, a space where I had allowed myself to shrink, where I had ignored the signs, the lies, the slow erosion of my dignity. Now, I was done with all of it. The meeting with my lawyer was straightforward. The evidence I had gathered left no room for negotiation. The financial records, the hotel charges, the emails. Amanda had buried herself so deep that there was no way out. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Rachel, skimmed through the documents with a satisfied nod. This is airtight, she said, flipping through the pages. With this, we can push for full financial separation and even leverage for full custody, if that's something you want. Custody. The word hit harder than I expected. We didn't have kids, but in that moment, I realized that Amanda had been the child in this relationship. I had been the one cleaning up messes, making sure things ran smoothly while she played reckless games, expecting no consequences. I exhaled. I just want to be free of her. Rachel nodded. Then that's what we'll do. The next few weeks passed in a blur. I moved into a small but comfortable apartment across town, something temporary while I figured out my next steps. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I filled the space with things that made me happy. Books, a decent coffee maker, a comfortable couch that no one would criticize me for sitting on too much. It was the first time in years that I felt like I had control over my own life. Amanda, on the other hand, was unraveling. Word had spread quickly about her firing. In her industry, reputation was everything, and hers was in flames. She reached out a few times, first with angry texts, then with desperate ones. You didn't have to do this. We could still fix things. I lost everything, Mark. Please. I never responded. I knew her too well. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was sorry that she had been caught. Sorry that her perfect world had collapsed around her. Sorry that I had slipped out of her grasp before she could find a way to manipulate me into staying. Then, a week before our first court date, she showed up at my apartment. I heard the knock and debated not answering. But I knew Amanda. If I didn't let her in, she'd keep coming back, keep finding ways to insert herself into my life. Better to get it over with. I opened the door. She looked different. Not the polished, confident woman she had always been. Her hair was slightly messy, her makeup barely there. She was wearing a hoodie. Amanda never wore hoodies. She swallowed hard. Can we talk? I leaned against the door frame, crossing my arms. About what? She let out a breath. About us. There is no us, I said flatly. Her eyes flickered with something, pain, maybe, or just frustration that I wasn't giving her what she wanted. Mark, please. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. But I don't know how to fix this. I studied her for a long moment. You can't. She blinked rapidly, like she was trying to hold back tears. You used to love me. I sighed. Yeah, I did. And for a long time, I thought that meant something. I thought that if I was patient, if I was kind, if I just kept trying, you'd eventually see me the way I saw you. I shook my head. But you never did. Her lips trembled. I don't want to lose you. I tilted my head. Amanda, be honest. Do you miss me? Or do you miss the life you had with me? She opened her mouth, then closed it. She didn't have an answer. I stepped back, gripping the edge of the door. Goodbye, Amanda. She let out a small, broken sound. Mark, I shut the door. And just like that, I was free. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter. The weight of the past was gone, and for the first time in years, the future felt like mine again. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.